Just the facts, ma'am.
Welcome to our Just the Facts segment for today. We've got Scott F. Paradis, who calls himself a student of life and a seeker of ultimate truth. A 30-year Army veteran, he retired as a colonel. He presently lives in Eagle River, Alaska with his family. This appears to be sort of a suburb of Anchorage, a city that I've had the pleasure of visiting, a great place. He's also not far from the Moose Run Golf Course, and I just had to mention that as well. It's so Alaska, what can I say? And when Absolutely. I was in Anchorage, I did see moose and caribou, and it was pretty cool.
Yes.
He's a prolific author, producer of training programs on diverse topics ranging from politics to money to self-improvement. Rather than shorten his time with us, let's hear from him now. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me, David. I appreciate that. I just want to mention, since you brought up Moose Run, I was out on the golf course last week, and we had a black bear out there with us, helping us move along.
And what is the approach with I know grizzlies are really, really scary. What's the approach with a black bear?
For the most part, they're more timid. So the grizzlies know that they're the big dogs, so to speak, but the black bears are a little more timid. So we didn't have any problems.
Good to hear. Did you ever lose any balls where a moose or a bear took one?
Well, I usually end up my golf game with more balls than I started with, because I'm usually in the woods. So I might not end up with mine, but I end up with somebody's.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I envy you to the extent that you've been able to find enough time to go golfing. I did some golfing in the late 90s with my two sons, and we worked together with a coach and did that for over a year and a half. And I still have a set of clubs somewhere. But frankly, I have been so incredibly busy that I really just don't do that. Yes. But I think it's terrific, and I bet you it's a gorgeous place to play golf.
It was beautiful. Yes, absolutely.
Super. Scott, let's tell our audience why they should read Sheep Herders Wolves. What a great title.
Thanks. Well, Sheep Herders Wolves, I call it's an answer to why we are where we are. And you look at that both politically and socially, why we are where we are. But I've written it I subtitle as a modern American fable. So it's a fictional story, but it's a story about how we got here. And just synopsis real quick, it's a college student. He's finishing up his term. And at last night of the term, the celebration, one of his friends says, hey, society works by two dictums. Might makes right, which always results in the many serving the few. Might makes right, which results in the many serving the few. And our hero in the story, Jeff, says, hey, that doesn't sit well with him. So he leaves and he goes home for the weekend or for winter break, and he runs into some family situations, and he says, hey, Jose's comment, might makes right, doesn't fit right with my family situation. We did a 60th anniversary celebration. He goes to church and he gets the sermon. It's all not sitting right. So on a Sunday afternoon, he plays cribbage. He always plays cribbage when he's home with his grandfather. He brings it up with his grandfather, and his grandfather, who is an immigrant, came over from France right after World War II, says, let me tell you a story my father told me right on the fields of Normandy in 1944. And he tells him the story of Sheep Herders Wolves, which is this fable of God experimenting before he creates humans. He's got to figure out, how am I going to make this human that I give free will to, but then they're not extremely big or ferocious, but they've got to get along socially. So he runs an experiment with sheep. He says, okay, I'm going to give sheep are very social, they're very capable, but for sheep to survive, leaders have to emerge. So I'm going to give these sheep these ability to change into leaders when it's needed. And just when things get tough, always some sheep decide to emerge as leaders and guard and guide the flock. But God gave them free will. So the sheep could also decide, I don't want to go with the flock. I want to go on my own way and become a wolf. And so the sheep could transition to become wolves, and that's when the trouble begins. So it's much like we are, as in this analogy, we are the flock. We need leaders to emerge to guide and guard us, and we need to go along with that good guidance and guardianship. But at the same time, we can choose to go the more self-centered, self-absorbed path, and that's when all the trouble happens. So the story plays out again and again. Always, if good leadership emerges, the sheep flourish. If the wolves take over, then it's the flock is decimated. But eventually, always the same thing would always happen. Once the flock's decimated, the wolves turn on each other. And that played out over and over and over again. And God set the experiment. And the afternoon of cribbage ends with Papa telling his grandson, Jeff, that it's up to us to choose which course we're going to follow. And that's hopefully a dose of inspiration.
That's fascinating, Scott. And I guess, again, we've got fairly short time. We want to get our audience engaged and learn a little bit more about you. Give us the Cliff Notes version of the truth about American politics.
That's another thing I'm working on. I've got an audio program out on the web, but I've also completing a book, and I'm posting it on my blog, on my website. But I've titled it, "Are Americans Really This Stupid? Are politicians really this inept?" So get to the short answer to that. Americans aren't stupid, but I think by and large, we tend to be lazy. We always take the path of least resistance. We've got to understand, now this is where I get to the truth about politics. Politics is a power game. Always has been, always will be. Some people play it very, very well. And what happens in our American political system is the people, we the people, think that we elect representatives who are going to look out for our best interests. Well, what in fact happens is they're ultimately concentrating power in the hands of a small few folks who actually employ them. And this is where we go wrong. And the truth about politics is understanding that it's a power game. It always works this way, whether it's an autocracy or it's a democracy. It's a few people at the top that actually take control of the power. We need to understand that. And the way to change that is to actually distribute the power and empower more people. Until we figure that out, how to do that, then we are going to continue to struggle. That's essentially, in a nutshell, the truth about politics.
That sounds great, Scott. And that fits with one of my personal campaigns, which is that we have got to get term limits. We've got to have term limits all across the board. And I promote that in my book. And we're going to talk some more about, I have a new book coming out later this summer, and one of the pitches in the book is for term limits. So sounds like we're on the same wavelength.
It's funny. I read your book, The Decline of America, and I looked at your prescription, and I thought, okay, you and I are on the same page.
Well, Scott, I much admire what you've talked about in your background. Like I said, spent some time on your website. We've got a little bit of time left. I want you to talk a little bit about a different topic we haven't talked about yet, and that's everybody loves to make money. It's part of the American tradition, and you're working on a book called Money: The New Science of Making It, and it's a 2021 posting. So tell us quickly about that.
Yes. So this essentially is my focus is understanding fundamentals. So it's fundamentals of leadership and success. And so one of the areas I focused on is money. And the challenge is everybody wants money. And there's two ways to acquire money, if you will. One way is to make it. The other is to take it. We get a lot of folks, I think, are in the wrong direction in the take it side. The make it side is essentially you got to understand what money is. Now, if you go out on the street and you ask people, you hold up a $100 bill and you say, what's this backed by? People will say, some will tell you it's backed by gold. It's not backed by gold.
Of course.
Our currency is completely based, it's fiat currency based on trust. It's fundamentally about trust. The foundation of all wealth creation is people doing something. So trade, commerce, business is people doing something and trading, engaging with each other. So understanding how to make money is understanding that, first of all, money is a tool, but it's a tool that facilitates trade, which is people doing things for each other. And that's essentially what this book is about, understanding what the fundamentals of money are and then how to make money.
Incredible, Scott. Well, you are a true Renaissance man. That term gets paraded out from time to time. If our audience would like some more information, where should they go?
Well, I have my website is Scott, SCOTT, F as in Frank, Paradis, PARADIS.com, scottfparadis.com. That's a great place.
Sounds pretty easy, and that sounds great. Well, listen, keep doing what you're doing. It's fascinating stuff, and I hope a few of our people will go check you out.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Take it easy, man. It's so good to speak with you.
Great to speak with you.